thanks for tuning in to BEaTS Research Radio, a podcast and YouTube channel dedicated to bringing our community closer to advancements in the science and engineering fields. I'm Hallie Arnott, and I'm going to be your host on today's episode. Today, we have Chris Gunn here with us, who is a photographer based in Washington, D.C., and Chris specializes in photographing science and technology. He's been working with NASA for 21 years as a project photographer and has been the lead photographer documenting the construction of the James Webb Space Telescope since 2009. Thank you so much for joining us here today on BEaTS Research Radio, Chris.
Thanks for having me.
So for a first question here to get things rolling, I'd like to ask you how you began to work with NASA. What led you to where you are today?
It was a job posting, actually. So I was a freelance photographer in the Washington, D.C. area for about 5 years after school. And, I was taking on the normal assignments that any young photographer might take on. I also worked for a couple of universities. And I saw this posting for a job at NASA as a photographer. I read the description and I'm like, hey, that seems like a really exciting place to work. In line with my interest, with science and that sort of thing. At least that's what I anticipated. And I interviewed for the job and got it. And it was pretty amazing right from the beginning.
Wow, very interesting. So would you say you've always been passionate about shooting scientific subject matter?
So I would. Now, I actually picked up my first camera when I was about 9 years old. And before that, I actually had a darkroom chemistry set because I was really interested in science as a kid. I used to hang out at the library looking for books. And one day I found a book on photochemistry. And I had my parents run out and get me the photochemistry, and they get me the trays and get me the paper. And I started doing experiments with this photochemistry. It was like, something to pass time as an only child. As I picked up the camera, I used the camera to photograph the natural world and the things around me, not so much people and what other young photographers might shoot. I photographed things of interest in nature, and I photographed the night sky and that sort of thing, even as a young child. So I've always been interested in the scientific application of photography. Yes.
Okay. So I guess communicating science to the public is extremely important. This is exactly what we're trying to do here on BEaTS Research Radio. And I think photography kind of it provides that first initial step in captivating the audience and enticing them to want to learn more. When you have a photograph and you've taken a picture of something, do you often get questions from the general public and not so much scientists who are interested in learning more about what you photographed?
Well, I do personally, like on my social media channels. I get questions all the time about what I'm photographing. So being knowledgeable about what I'm photographing is really important. So I'm integrated into the engineering team. And what that means is I'm waking up at 5:30 in the morning with the engineers before they start their day. We're going through the task for the day. We're figuring out what we're going to photograph or what needs to be photographed from a technical perspective. And then I build my creative workflow sort of around that. And, so what that allows me to do is create images based on the knowledge of what's really happening. So if there's a deployment happening, I can make a photograph that sort of showcases that deployment and light it in a certain way, or compose it in a way that it tells both the engineering side of it, the technical side, as well as a creative story. So I think it's really important to be able to do both.
Yeah, absolutely. So I feel like a lot of the initial work that you have to do on your end is speaking with the engineers, speaking with the scientists, and understanding that technology. From a perspective of a bird's eye view of what you do, how much time do you allocate to that understanding and initial learning of the subject matter that you're going to be shooting?
I dedicate a ton of time to understand what I'm shooting. I mean, when I first started working on this project, I really had no idea the scale of Webb. I took on the assignment. I was told this is your new project, the James Webb Space Telescope, and I really wasn't that familiar with it in terms of the the size of the project and what it all entailed. So I had a lot of research to do, and then I became really excited. And as the telescope started to be built up, like I said, we attend the meetings. The photographers actually attend the meetings. We talk to the engineers, we talk to the scientists, we figure out exactly what they want to see in the images from a technical standpoint. And that informs the creative photography to a great deal, because once I understand exactly the way things work, I can then light the subject, like the telescope, or compose my images in a way that lend themselves to the technical story as well as to the creative side. It's really important in shooting Webb, for example, to portray the geometry of Webb accurately. It has 18 mirrors, and if the camera is not positioned correctly, then there's some distortion. And any distortion, in my mind, for a project like Webb, sort of distorts the picture for the viewer. So it's really important for me to have the right camera angle, to use the right lenses, use the right lighting, to be able to accurately portray Webb. And almost like an architectural photographer might, but I have a lot more control because the subject matter is inside of a clean room most of the time.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So you're building, you have to understand the technical side of the photography, and then also understand the technical side of the subject matter that you're shooting, and you're creating this bridge that's essentially bringing two technologies together with an art form almost, which is really amazing to think about.
Exactly. And the other side of it is I really care. So I mean, I really, really, really care about this project. I want to see it succeed. I don't want to. Well, no, I do actually, and I'm super passionate about getting this telescope into getting the scenes that I'm looking at into the viewers, out to the viewers rather, so that they can see what I see. I mean, I really, really, really want to capture it in a way that the viewers say, "Wow, that's amazing." I want everyone to see what I see and feel what I feel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So getting to the final goal that you're talking about, and having that photograph that allows others to feel and see what you see.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say have been challenges in getting there, or obstacles that you've encountered with shooting the James Webb Telescope project?
Well, shooting space hardware like Webb is super challenging, primarily because of the environments that we shoot in. There's also a lot of training that is involved. We have to be trained for electrostatic discharge so that we don't, introduce any electrostatic charges into the hardware. We're trained to work in confined spaces. We're trained to work in elevated spaces and on lifts. There's also the cleanliness, obviously, because every day I go in, I have to don a clean suit. I have to get my camera equipment cleaned. So there are a lot of technical challenges from that standpoint, and but that's what makes it exciting. So I work in a completely different environment. Sometimes I have to get in a lift and work from 10 stories high in order to get my shots. So those technical challenges, I think, are really what makes shooting the project exciting. And it's also how I get some of the great shots that I get.
Yeah, absolutely. It definitely working in an environment that lots of people would probably never have the chance to be able to enter. When you're working in that environment and on the lifts and with the scientists and engineers who are also in the room, what's that dynamic like? And the conversation that goes on between the photographers who are trying to get the shots of the project, and also the mechanics and everyone who are working on the telescope. What does that look like?
So it's I can't think of an analog. I mean, it's pretty unique, but it's a team. So it's a team environment. Everyone's on the same team. Like you said, you have the technicians that are doing the wrenching and the torquing and what have you. You have the lead engineers that are sort of directing everyone, and you might have a lead scientist or a lead engineer make a visit into the clean room to just sort of make sure everything is going according to plan. that dynamic is amazing. I mean, it's really a great place to work when you're working with a team that's dedicated to a single task like that. You know, I get the shots that are required, and then I sort of back off and become an observer so that I can get the shots that I really want to push out to the public. So, so I'm a part of that team wholeheartedly, but at some point I step way back and just sort of become an observer and look for the parts of the scene that are dramatic, that look like science fiction, if you will, but it's science reality. You know what I mean? So and then I have a tendency to light things or compose things so that they do sometimes look like a frame out of a science fiction movie, but it's pretty obvious that this is real. You know, it's the real thing.
I have seen some of your work, and it is incredible. We'll definitely need to, we'll put some of the links to your social media as well as your website in the description in the video below. But
Awesome.
can you explain to us a little bit about where you are right now? We were just discussing that you're in California, and what are you shooting? What are you shooting there for the telescope?
So the telescope is located at Space Park, which is a Northrop Grumman facility in Redondo Beach, California. The telescope is launching later this year, and they are basically preparing it for launch. They're doing the final testing, a little bit of final integration, and in a few weeks here, they're going to pack it up into a shipping container so that it's ready to go down to French Guiana, which is where it's being launched from. So,
Okay.
So I'm here documenting that entire process.
Okay, very cool. So I guess the telescope is will it be wrapping up then the project for you here, or will it
Yes.
Yeah.
So after launch, I mean, essentially, I'm looking for a job. I'm already actually on the next project, which is the Roman Space Telescope, named after Nancy Grace Roman. The Roman Telescope, of course, is another infrared telescope, a complement to Webb, but it is a wide field view. Yeah, pretty exciting to be on that project as well.
Very cool. I'm sure you'll have lots of good insights to bring towards the next project
I think so.
as well.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
So as you're wrapping up this Webb project, what would you say your favorite experience was throughout the course of the project?
So I probably have a few favorite experiences. Anytime the entire mirror, the 6.5 meter primary mirror, was deployed, was pretty exciting. And you know, I have many photographs of that primary mirror fully deployed. Seeing the telescope down in the chamber and down in Houston, Texas, actually was pretty exciting. You know, the full telescope was in view. It was inside of a dark chamber which simulated space. Probably some of the most dramatic images I ever made were in that chamber. Now, but if I had to pick a single favorite, it would be when they deployed the secondary mirror support structure here at Northrop Grumman. At the end of that, I probably made one of the best images I ever made of the telescope. It's really dramatic, but it conveys a sense of awe. And it's the first and last time that structure was deployed here on Earth. And the next time that structure, it holds a secondary mirror, is going to be deployed, is going to be in space. So it's a pretty monumental event. And I made an amazing photograph.
Oh gosh, that is so cool. So where can our listeners and viewers go to find your work? I know I mentioned that we will link it down below, so we will. But if we can get it from you here.
So all of my web work and a little bit of my other science work is at The Light and the Lens, which is my Instagram handle. That's The Light and the Lens.
Okay, perfect. Awesome.
Okay.
Well, thank you so much, Chris, for joining us here today on BEaTS Research Radio and speaking to us about the awesome scientific communication that you're doing with your photography.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And thanks to our listeners. BEaTS Research Radio is supported by the University of Ottawa Heart Institute, the BEaTS Research Lab, and the Department of Biochemistry, Microbiology, and Immunology with the Faculty of Medicine. Thank you so much for tuning in, and don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube and podcast channels to stay in the loop for new episode releases.